Okay, Bram, we have another question for you. So supply chain is gaining more and more importance in the latest year, and of course C-level also needs to take its role in that change. Let's say, how do you see the role of C-level in, for example, forecasting or in that supply chain process?
My latest insights, based on the book I've written last year and also based on an article we are currently working on with Frank Vorat from Gartner, is that if you ask me, companies need to better integrate the planning processes. Financial planning, financial forecasting, S&OP, which is currently residing with supply chain, and even strategic planning. And if you ask me, these different planning processes need to be driven by supply chain. Why? Because supply chain has always done planning, and whereas a function like finance historically has been very good in accounting for the past, which is the accounting function, supply chain has always been very good in planning ahead for the future, including forecasting. And yet making supply chain responsible for strategic planning and financial planning in S&OP, I think that would be too big a step probably today for a lot of companies. But it still makes a lot of sense. Why? Because if you give it in the same hands, automatically you get a better integration. And so instead of duplicating the effort and having a separate financial planning and S&OP planning and then trying to integrate, it will be integrated by default and by design. And it will help companies to sail a bit tighter, right? If it's better integrated, you will be able to turn corners quicker and sharper compared to with processes which are not fully aligned. And the biggest fear of other C-level people might be like, but what would that mean, right? If supply chain takes responsibility for the strategic planning and the financial planning and the S&OP, is supply chain then running the company? The answer is no. Supply chain needs to moderate that. So if you look at the sales and operations planning process, supply chain should not define the forecast. No. In the end, it's up to sales and marketing, it's up to the business people to define the forecast. They should own the forecasting process. And the role of supply chain is to challenge the colleagues in sales and marketing whether this is really correct. So the role of supply chain is more integrating the different functions, challenging people to make sure that we don't introduce bias, that we are not overly optimistic, nor are we sandbagging. If we think we can do more, we should also really do more. So supply chain needs to challenge other functions. But the other functions in that, from that perspective, need to take ownership. And in a certain sense, the VP of Sales and Marketing, he will need to take ownership for the forecast. And the VP of Operations or the COO, he will need to take ownership, like once he has committed to delivering certain volumes within a certain inventory or working capital constraints over the next few months, that COO should take responsibility for delivering that plan. And if you look at the CEO, what is what should be his goal or what should be his commitment? Well, if you are the CEO of a company, for sure you need to first of all define how you are going to drive value for the shareholder. So the people who have invested in your company, how will you generate a decent return? And once you have defined that as a strategy, it's also your obligation to use a combined financial planning and S&OP process to follow up on that, to make sure that what the organization is currently deploying and what the organization is currently doing is also delivering upon the promises that you have made. So I'm still puzzled why in some companies C-level don't seem to be buying into an S&OP process or forecasting or different types of planning. Also for the CEO, it's simply part of your responsibility. First of all, you need to define how you will drive value, and then you need to monitor and follow up. And if you look at that S&OP process, if you can really get a view for the next 12 to 18 months on what will be the sales volumes where in the world, what will be the resulting net sales, how that will translate into EBIT, and which level of investment and working capital you will need to realize that, so how that will translate in return on capital employed. It's your only duty to chair that meeting, and in case there are questions or difficult decisions need to be taken to correct, let us say, during the course of the year, you simply need to be there. You should not, there's also simply no other way to really do it. So in that sense, I think the role of supply chain certainly should be extended, and we should integrate the different types of planning and put supply chain in the lead for that. And then supply chain should actively challenge different functions, different C-level roles in the organization to come up with a realistic plan. And the CEO should make sure that he uses that plan also as a follow-up for the strategy he has defined, and to keep shareholders up to date on how he is driving value for them as investors of the company.
Okay, I think that's a great message for C-level out there. Thank you.